order. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this public meeting of the Philadelphia Board of Pensions and Retirement is being conducted in person in the board's conference room on the board's offices on the 16th floor of 2 Penn Center. Pursuant to section 21-1303 of the Philadelphia Code, electronic recordings of this meeting will be made available through Microsoft Teams conference technology and by an audio recording. An electronic recording will be made available to the public online at the board's website without charge within 10 days. Please note that you consent to such recording by attending, participating, or speaking at today's meeting. With that, our first order of business is a motion to adopt the rules of order that the board has approved and used for our virtual public meetings on our last two, the October and December in-person public meetings. The purpose of these rules is to help ensure the accurate and complete audio and audio-visual recordings of the meeting so we comply with the code requirements. So item one, a motion to adopt the new procedures for today's meeting has been made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll move to the roll. Christie? Ruth? Brian?
Approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approve. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries unanimously. Item two, a motion to approve the minutes from our December meeting was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
Approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approve. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
And Carol. Motion carries unanimously. Item three, a motion to approve 120 pension applications and 73 withdrawal applications has been made and properly seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Approve.
Brian? Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approve. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries unanimously. Section 4, motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for James Kennedy was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
Approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approve. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries unanimously. 4B, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Sean Flynn was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
Approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Denad? Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
Approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
The motion carries 7-1. 4C, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Stephen Arvis was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
Approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
No.
Sherilyn? Denad? Roosevelt?
I approve.
Paul?
I approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries 6-2. 4D, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for James Bryan was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
I approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approve. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
I approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
Motion carries unanimously. 4E, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for Trina Graham Bates was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
I approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Approve. Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
I approve.
And Carol.
Approve.
The motion carries unanimously. 4F, a motion to approve the service-connected disability benefits for John Sears was made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll move to the roll. Christie?
Approve.
Brian?
I approve.
Vanessa?
Approve.
Marcia?
Approve.
Sherilyn? Denad? Roosevelt?
Approve.
Paul?
I approve.
Carol.
Approve.
The motion carries 7-1. Moves us to section 5. 5A, a motion to approve Alice Child application for local child survivorship benefits has been made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Question, please. Carol,
Yes, thank you. I would like to send it for here.
send 5A to a hearing panel.
Yes.
There's thank you. So a revised motion to send case 5A to a hearing panel was made and properly seconded. Is there any discussion on the revised motion? Hearing none, we'll move to a roll on the revised motion. Christie?
Approved.
Brian?
Aye.
Vanessa?
Approved.
Marcia?
Approved.
Sherilyn?
Approved.
Roosevelt?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
The revised motion carries unanimously. Section 6. 6A, a motion to approve Sharon Bentley's application for service connected disability has been made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Denied.
Brian?
Approved.
Vanessa? Denied. Marcia?
Denied.
Sherilyn? Denied. Roosevelt?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
The case was tied at 4-4, and as the chair voted to deny to break the tie, so case 6A fails. 6B, a motion to approve Christopher Gilman's application regarding rescinding drop enrollments been made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll move to the roll. Christie?
Denied.
Brian?
Denied.
Vanessa?
Denied.
Marcia?
Denied.
Sherilyn? Roosevelt?
Denied.
Paul?
Denied.
And Carol.
Denied.
The motion fails 0-8. To 6C, a motion to approve Patricia Hodge's application for service connected disability has been made and seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Approved.
Brian?
Approved.
Vanessa?
Denied.
Marcia?
Denied.
Sherilyn? Roosevelt?
I approve.
Paul?
Approved.
And Carol.
Approved.
The motion carries 5-3. Brings us into new business and executive director.
Good morning.
Iron staff and the OIT pension payroll specialists are working on the second half of the PAF. So over last year, half of the PAF was paid out, second half to be paid out this year. It looks like on the same timeline, May, June, be paid out. We will notify you when we have the multiplier, so you can let your members know. And assuming the board's not changing the criteria as established last year as to who's eligible. PAF except for the fact in 10 years, there's obviously additional. All the other criteria, I assume, stay the same. And we can talk about that later when we get the actual letter from Chiron. Speaking of Chiron, the annual actuarial report or summary is scheduled to be made at February 14th. So the actuary will be here, will be giving a presentation on their findings for the year. The return, the funding percentage, and the projections will all be done in February. And then we normally get the formal report in March. So that's February. The actuarial RFP, that's in the final stages of review and comparison of all the respondents. Once that's done, we will notify the subcommittee to get together to review the finalists and then we did get 6 responses. Chiron, NOA, and Buck, and Foster. Pension payroll software, we're starting the initial process of looking at software to improve pension payroll. Something that's probably not was considered previously, and something that is compatible with kind of HR payroll. Since we're the end user of that information, we'll make sure that we put a good team together, including the OIT pension payroll folks. Some project coordinators for the city who coordinate projects, not prior projects, but projects going forward. And we also want to put together at least one member of the board, but that's premature at this point. Let us try to get a framework together. Like I said, it's very early initially, but we would like the board to do about step by step, move forward to ensure, which we, the pension fund ensured last time, robust testing and so on and so forth, before we made any decisions to move forward, and we know that we decided not to move forward. Use the system. So we will ensure robust testing to ensure that, that we have a system where we're not jeopardizing accuracy, timings. So that's probably a several-year project. But we're starting now. The rest of that, we will give, of course, we'll have a trustee about to give periodic updates aside from that also. So there's no surprises that everyone is going to do. In this situation, transparency. For the board, if you have any questions, there will be some sort of transition. I think that's all I have. Oh, no, I do have something else. Thank you, Jack. There was a, Elizabeth sent it out electronically, but there's some forms on the table. NASP recently did a conference in Philadelphia, the general conference, is having in March 9th to 10th, a women's forum, taking ownership and doing influence through leadership. It's in the NASP women's forum. So this is March 9th to 10th, and this is also in Philadelphia. So I don't know if the board has a motion for anyone who might want to attend that, and it would be the same process. If anyone wants to attend, to contact the legislature. So, registration.
Trustees on the motion.
I'll make a motion that everyone wants to attend.
Second. Motion made and properly seconded regarding the next March Women's Conference that Grant mentioned. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie? Ruth? Brian? Vanessa? Approved. Marcia?
Approved.
Sherilyn? Approved. Roosevelt?
Approved.
Paul?
Approved.
And Carol?
Approved.
And carries unanimous.
Just one more comment on that NASP conference. That, I'm not trying to encourage or force anyone to go, but elected trustees tend to time to time elect attend conferences. There's nothing wrong with the administration trustees attending those conferences. There are good learning opportunities in both the area of investments, mainly investments, but also benefits. And you get to network with people who have a lot of experience in the field. So I would encourage people who are interested. Don't take a shot. Don't ask them. I don't know if you have to modify somebody. Certainly encourage administration and elected.
Thanks, Grant. And I heard that Carol and Chris and Wakefield represented the board well at the January.
I heard they did very well, but Carol escaped to Cuba, so I couldn't give any feedback. Carol, I don't know if you or Chris or Wake would want to give a summary of how it went. But they both individually won different panels and different groups. They went in a different perspective.
No, I mean, I've spoken at NASP a few times over the year. So really well attended. Get to catch up with some folks, especially now that first pandemic haven't really seen. Get to compare notes on certain investment ideas with different folks. So I always find it really worthwhile. Staff by choice or design doesn't attend a lot of conferences or things like that. But you do especially when you're local.
Oh, yeah, everything was great. Everything was great, great food, and Chris represented us very well. We got a lot of response, and of course, they came up to me and I referred them right to them. They might got much easier, but, you know, it was a great conference, nice meeting people again. They asked about our process of investing in South Africa. That was one of the main things. And then they had a lot of people who were like small business beginner entrepreneurs. That was a family was very good. It was a young man who talked about his product and how he got started. And because he lost his hair at an early age, he created the process of how to grow their hair back and develop wigs or whatever for men and stuff like that. It looked very nice. Nobody could really tell the wig we started talking about. So.
You have a name and number for this guy?
It was nice conference, it was nice representation. The Philadelphia chapter in Nash, we have a Philadelphia chapter in Nash as well, which everybody remember, they did a very good job. I can't wait till we do conference, we really for the shine. So I'm asking to put our people on board, so when I be coming to y'all, you know, I want to volunteer. Our time, I shine. Thank you.
Great, thanks, girl. Any other new business before the board? That leads us to the litigation summary.
I hope you do your arbitrations, but you do have to pay for copy of the regulations.
Okay. And with that, a motion to adjourn has been made and seconded. Hearing no objections, motion carries unanimously, and we're going to move into deferred comp.
Yeah, I just realized I got it together. After 2 years, that's on me.
All right, item one is to approve our minutes from our December meeting. A motion was made and properly seconded. Any discussion on this item? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie? Brian? Diane? Okay, Francois? I gotta know the alphabet. Yeah, I agree you are. The number. Marcia? Sherilyn? Oh, sorry. Rosebud. Really giving them all my votes. Paul? And Carol? Approved. Okay. Motion on the minutes carried unanimously, moves us into the deferred content of
It's just super brief, following the presentation from Ian and Brad, talk about third quarter performance. So that, Ian and Brad
Good morning.
Good morning.
As of December 31st, 2022, the deferred compensation plan assets ended at $1,617,009,001.39. That is 2% less than the month of November. Total plan participants with account balances is 24,913. That's 5 more than the month of November. Actively deferring is 19,356. It's 2 more than the month of November. New enrollments in the month of December, we received 112. At the last board meeting, the trustees had asked us to break the enrollments that we're receiving from Philadelphia Parking Authority, as well as the Philadelphia Housing Corporation. So as you all know, Philadelphia Parking Authority transition on November 17 of last year. There are a total of 437 participants, but in December, we received 13 new enrollments. That's included in that new enrollment number that we provided. With PHDC, they joined the city plan in September of 2020, and we have 48 enrollments, only 1 new enrollment. In the 401A plan, the ending balance is $2,231,181.07. That's 3% less than the month of November. Total participants is 954. which is about 6 more than November. In terms of call volumes handled, in the month of December is 3,018. That's a decrease of 79 phone calls in the month of November. Year to date, just to give you an approximate idea, the Solutions Center handled 37,896 phone calls from city employees. That's about 9% more than the previous year. In terms of participants that are setting up an online account, it's 18,425. That's about 74% of all participants have set up an online account. One of the things we wanted to notify the trustees is that the website has the new deferral limits for 2023. It's 22,500 is the maximum deferral limit. And if one is over 50, it's additional 7,500. Percentage option in the month of December, total of 1,392 participants are utilizing the percentage option. That's an increase of 32 more than the month of November. And then in the Roth, which is the after-tax contributions, as of December, there's 5,065 participants. That's an increase of 63 more than November. The total planned assets in the Roth, 30.8 million. I'm happy to answer any questions if you may have. If not, I'm going to pass on to Brad to discuss the service activity report.
I know information was sent out, was there anything you want to do to summarize these two activities as a project?
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much. So it's still in, we are just working on the details regarding guidance of what's optional for the plan sponsor and what's mandatory. So we'll be able to provide more information in the coming months. We're still working through the information.
Can I ask, I think it's where they're forcing catch-up contributions into Roth and the Secure Act, does that take effect January 1 right now, or is that pushed back?
It's still, we're still waiting for the guidance as to going to be mandatory, but it is going to be effective this year.
At some point?
Yeah.
Not yet.
Thanks to the board, everyone. As far as the local office activity, we had 117 one-on-one consultations done by the local staff. Of those, 62 enrollments, 13 group events with a total of 213 attendees, and of those were new employee orientations. Going along with what Dina said about the PTA, we did do 2 sessions for the PTA at 8th Street during the month also, so we're continuing our efforts in getting out and talking to the parking authority folks about the benefits of the city's plan also. With that?
I do, I have a question. Has EC33 been contacting you about participating in their new employee orientation?
We are participating in their new employee orientation. Yep.
I didn't notice that they were this.
So, in December, you're right.
And I noticed last month also.
So I think that might be my mistake.
Okay, good. I mean, I mean good. I mean good that you're working on the orientations, because I want to ensure that our employees in EC33 really have that same opportunity as their, you know.
100%.
Because I've been after them too.
I will look to confirm that.
Okay.
It's probably where you gotta list it, because if you see the Boston Garden down here, then you see Juvenile Justice Center,
Yeah.
then you see,
Streets, I think he's going to streets though. I think he's going to
Yeah.
streets.
so I'm just saying, so it's probably, these are 33, some 33 employees, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, but what happens is they have an orientation.
They have the orientation right now, they do,
Yeah, now they do,
Now
they
do,
started
right.
this year, so I want to make sure that we're getting them.
But the crossing guards, yeah, they probably do, but it's
Yeah.
probably where you got listed instead of like, just like you do, you got 47, remember, you probably have to do 30.
Yeah, and it might just, to be honest with you, I see the way, the team is tracking and the way I'm getting the information. I'll confirm that, and I'll send a corrected report to Chris, and he'll I'll send it out to everybody, the next day or two, so everybody has that. My apologies
Oh,
for
that's okay.
that,
That's not a problem.
oversight.
One of the things is they're hiring the most people in the city right now.
Yeah.
And with the change with DC 33 members required to actually enter into that health plan, we want to make sure that we capture all of them. They can no longer enter the CAP plan as of January 15th of 2023. So we want to make sure that they're given that same opportunity.
Absolutely, I do know for 100% certainty that Sean was out at, one, last week there was 50 new hires at that one last week.
Oh, terrific, terrific.
Yep.
Thank you.
So we'll get a corrected report out, I
Okay, great.
apologize again for that.
Any other questions? Great, thank you. That moves us to our Q3 investment report.
So in terms of the Q3 mutual fund and investment performance report, staff's report reminder, there was a corrected page sent out pertaining to Fidelity Real Estate at the end. There was a Q3 data was incorrect. Year-to-date data was accidentally put in there, so Q3 data down around -11, very close to the benchmark, so we're not good about that. You'll see that for the three-year period, 15 of the 24 funds are above the median. For the 5-year period, 18 of the 24 funds. Based on the Q3 data and preliminary Q4 data, which we'll review next month, we're recommending February meeting discussion and examination of a possible replacement for at least something to pair with Harvard Capital, perhaps index options to pair with them. We think Mass Mutual and Fidelity Real Estate more competition review, but the initial fourth quarter data does show improving performance for both of those options. You'll see the data for Harbor on page 5 of your report at the top. So while they had a really good third quarter in terms of participating, capturing assets, retaining assets on the downside, they have struggled longer term, particularly over that 1-year period. Now, interestingly, you'll note that even in the 3- and 5-year period where they were significantly underperformed, they've still been in the second quartile for managers. So it's been a difficult stretch in the Russell 1000 growth space for active managers. You've gotten initial pricing data and index options with some help from Nationwide. There's 3 index options available, including Fidelity, Vanguard, and other that we'll be reviewing. But you'll see they've been primarily hurt by some of their top holdings. Tesla, Apple, Amazon, the tech sector has been pounded pretty hard over the last several months. They have not been immune to that. So again, we'll be bringing some options for your consideration. And then just briefly, you'll see Mass Mutual Select, as we noted, improving performance of this preliminary fourth quarter, but they ranked towards the third quartile over the third quarter, the 3-year, and the 5-year. They did protect well over the 1-year period. And you can see that what they've been hurt by fund information listed below. Lastly, Fidelity, which is at the back of the report, which I mentioned, with the correct information. They have also ranked towards the bottom of the peer rankings, particularly over the longer time period. And they, there's somewhere, again, we want to keep an eye on. We are seeing signs of improvement in performance from that preliminary data, not ready to recommend action. I think it's also probably worthwhile that if our see this request, perhaps to see how they're going to do the term in this space. A couple of years ago, it's been just to track, whether or not the substitution that we made, panned out well, or if there's something, we could be doing to improve our process. So we will bring those numbers to the table. Happy to take any questions on those topics or recommendations.
Chris, can we go to page 2 and 3? This might be a question for Congress. If you look at the difference between 457 and 401A, I've been harping for years to look over. Our members have too much in the guarantee fund, which is not a good thing in the long run. If you look in the 457, we're 45, which is a huge improvement over the last 3 or 4 years. Look at the 401A. I mean, they're setting it up right, in my opinion. What's the difference? Why are they investing different, so significantly different than the 457? Is it education? Is it a younger base? What is the difference? Because that's a significant difference between investors.
What's the percentage limit?
If you look over here, the guarantee for the 401A, the guarantee fund is 15.37.
You know why? Because that's defined benefits capped at $65,000.
Right.
They understand that in order to enhance their retirement, they need investment return.
How do they understand that? That's the question. 'Cause
Well,
I don't know.
I think, and Brad's going to answer that part.
That's the
I think it's
question right there.
education. That's the answer to that.
Yeah.
That's why it's done a great job.
I think it's a combination of factors. One is probably the age, right? The average person that's in the 401A is younger, because they're in playing 10 or playing 16, so they only got hired, in the last 10 years as opposed to the 457, which is folks that could have been employed for 30, 40 years. I think the other, quite frankly, like you said, is the value of the CFP within the deferred comp plan, as well as the value of the education, the webinars that we trying to do and when we're out there talking to the employees.
Right, and I appreciate that. What would change between the education they're getting on the 457 and the 401A? I'm not seeing it, because I think you do a great job at that.
I don't think it's the education, I think it's the comfortableness of the 401A versus the 457. So like, Fran said, the 401A is tied to their
So they pay more attention because they
yeah,
have
so
to.
this is tied to their pension.
Makes perfect
This is
sense.
going to be the calculation. The 457 is an investment that they're considering. Some of them consider it still risky. So they're treated like that. I don't think it's the education. I think it's how people are comfortable with it. But the more the change happened with the age group coming in, so we still got a lot of old people.
Yeah, I know a lot of
Or they-
retirees stay in the 457. I
Yeah.
have to imagine that's the bulk of what we're seeing here.
And a lot of that is also, a good portion of money rolls from the drop plan into the 457
Right.
deferred comp plan.
Right.
And a lot of those folks are, especially when it comes to the drop money, tend to be risk averse. When it comes to the drop money, they might have their 457 account diversified, but they might say, I don't want that drop money to be, I want that to be more secure.
Right.
It may be interesting to see, based on what you said, how many active employees, what the percentage of guaranteed fund is for active employees, or those less, younger than 40, those younger than 50, those younger, whatever.
That's easy.
Yeah.
I harp on that for 7 years now. I think that's the key. This is a great lineup. The 401A, in my opinion, is doing right. We're still a little off on this side, but it's pretty cool. I would love to see that. It's easy. It's not.
So we did do a demographic breakdown in the FITs just to analyze by age group, how many folks are, where the dollars are and how the breakdown is. So what we did notice, exactly as you had mentioned, Frank, is that 45% of the participants that have fixed account exposure is age 30 to 39. So a couple of things Brad and I, in partnership with staff, is to do an outreach and education to do a communication to those specific folks that have way too concentration for that age group, a flyer that says, meet with the reps, review, diversifies the importance of diversification. So that's something that we will take back. But we did break it down and we can certainly share it with you, but we did notice that as well.
That's kind of what I'm driving towards. I didn't realize you did that, but those statistics will help us fix this. is what you know.
Absolutely, and we'll be happy to share that with staff, just to, this was an analysis that was done at the end of December, just to see, there's a high concentration of kids, and we're always monitoring by age group, like in 4 to 7, you'll see that the concentration is heavily weighted for the 60-year-olds. That's where most of the dollars are, which makes sense, these are those high stock dollars.
Right.
But in the 401A, when we see the younger group having a higher concentration, that raises the awareness for us to do a further outreach efforts.
Is your older group that's more comfortable in that guarantee? That's because really,
Yes.
so what they say, when we started deferred comp, and it was real risky, right? So for people to begin to trust it again, right? They would like guaranteed this stay, guaranteed, and you'll be, so for the older people who don't want to put their money in the bank, but still want to put it under the mattress, guaranteed is where they want to be. So you're not going to get them to move. My group of people, my age, they ain't going nowhere. So it's even when I talk to people about rolling over, it's a hard time to have people roll their drop money over because they want their money. They want to hold it because they don't trust the banks no more. They don't trust nothing. So it might move some, but I don't think it will move the direction you think we should move. It's just yeah, it's going slow. Until I guess most of the game planners are. The younger kids don't care. Most of them don't stay nowhere past 5 years, so they really don't. Yeah, I had this problem with my daughter too. They jump job, they job, pop job, they don't go create or 401k or whatever like that. They don't understand the value of that. So for this number to be here for the younger people, I'm really amazed. You know what I'm saying? But
I do think though, this is a great discussion. I do think, and thank you for bringing up that point, Mark. I do think it's about education, but also about us continually, it has to be a constant churn of educating people. Because, you can say it one time, yeah, but we have to say it again and again, because for people who are young right now, who are in the new plan, the hybrid plan, this is gonna be more important to them and their families for generational wealth as they continue to grow and expand. So I think we need to figure out, and I think you guys are doing an excellent job at continuing to educate. And maybe we, one of the things that's been happening in the city is we've been having educational seminars for all employees. And let's say, for instance, this isn't related to this, but it's related in terms of the knowledge and financial awareness that employees have. You know how we just rolled out that program for employees to get these reduced loans for home, to buy their first purchase of a home.
yeah,
We had over close to 1,000 people who participated in that lunch and learn, who actually came on, participated, and asked questions. And so, yeah, turnkey, thank you so much. I forgot the name of it. But I think there is a level of awareness and people are hungry for financial information. And the other thing is we've also learned that financial awareness is also a mental health issue. And so if we can help educate people at a young age and continue with them. But we help educate people at a younger age, continue, then over time, these same employees will actually, by the time they get ready to retire, they'll have a good nest egg for themselves and their families. So that's kind of the way we should be thinking about it. And, that's a good topic, I think, for us as stewards of our employees and their retirement programs, I think.
so, yeah, very good. I'm not going to leave that. So the other question, I guess, is more to Chris, when you mentioned us looking at the lineup of investment we have. So do we do that on an annual basis, or do we leave it like it is? And do we know how many minority managers are within this realm of investors or funds and stuff like that?
So we do look at it every quarter.
Okay.
And I can confirm the number of either two. Obviously, there's a pretty heavy tilt within the lineup, around 50%. That's managers generally have tried to pair index option, an active option, and as you know, with only a couple of exceptions, there aren't a lot of diverse mutual fund index products that want. So
But it is some more, though, right?
there are more that we could bring in as
Okay.
options, particularly on the active side. But we do on a quarterly basis, we're constantly reviewing the fund, seeing where staff thinks something should be replaced or where a pair, a index option or something should be brought in. I'm happy to come back with the statute ask for it at the next meeting. I believe it's one or two. It's not a high number given the number of managers.
Any other questions on the report? I believe that brings us to the Vanguard Money Market account update.
Thanks. Just briefly on the money market account, as you know, this is where revenue that is paid to the plan flows back to. It's made up of any fees, rebates, interest income earned on the account. As of the end of September, there was just under $168,000 in that account, and total income year to date was a little over $41,000. Assets of the account must be used for exclusive purpose of providing benefit to the members and defraying any reasonable expenses. There was no expenses this quarter, no money was spent or used out of the account. And lastly, it's been the board's general practice to do a program rebate to participants when we get to about $1 million. That was done within the last couple of years. So that's why you see a fairly low balance relative to.
Any questions on that? Okay. Moves us to item 5, the third-party administrator RFP search recommendation. Before we begin that item, I would like to ask any applicants for that opportunity to please exit the room at this time. Chris, do we have any issues with the team's report?
Yeah, Bill said it's just a report. Thanks, Jackie. So as folks know, we have the 457 and 401A plans nationwide, currently served as our third-party administrator. Due to the plans, contract terms, and the code provisions, opportunities of this type have to be bid out at least once every 4 years. In order to comply with that, staff posted a notice back in early October that ran through November 9th of 2022, asking for qualified firms to submit bids. We received 2 responses. I would say that number isn't entirely surprising given the level of consolidation in the industry. 5, 10, 15 years ago, I would have expected to receive more, 10 or 6, 7, but there's not a lot of players left in the space. As I'll get to in a moment, one of the folks that I think used to respond and there was usually did a pretty good job with their RFPs was actually bought out by the respondents. Staff considered several key factors in evaluating the providers. I do want to Tyler and Vern were helpful and instrumental in reviewing these responses. We looked at their ability to provide plan administration, record keeping, education, communication services for a plan of this size. Their ability to work with the board and staff to implement and maintain processes to continue to increase enrollment. Their willingness to provide a minimum of 2 on-site field representatives, as well as expenses and fees that will be paid by our participants. Consider as well the overall organizational organizational stability. For the incumbent Nationwide, we consider team familiarity, overall satisfaction with the relationship with that firm to date. For the non-incumbents, we consider their ability to provide a fairly quick and seamless transition from one provider to another. We had 2 conference calls, one for each respondent. December 6th, we met with Nationwide. December 20th, we met with Empower. Following those calls, we sent multiple questions to both applicants and had a series of follow-up conversations, both verbally and exchanged information. On page 3, we provide very brief overviews of each firm, Nationwide and Empower. As I referenced earlier, you note in the Empower section, one of the firms that used to reply fairly regularly, Prudential, actually combined with Empower back several years ago. So that's, I think, the main reason why we don't see the response. In terms of the firm comparisons, which started in the middle of page 3, both firms touted their systems, the product enhancements to keep pace with rapid changes in the market. Both Empower and Nationwide focused on client education and increased employee participation. Very little difference in terms of their capabilities with the phone service, both during normal business hours and after hours for folks who don't want to deal with someone in person or online. On-site staffing. Nationwide proposed no changes to the current lineup. Brad will continue to serve in his role along with the recent hires Christina and Sean as retirement specialists. Angie would remain in her role as office manager and Don as the on-site certified financial planner. We continue to work with Dina and of course Jeff and the other folks. Empower proposed to have 3 team members on site for education and enrollment. Those employees would be selected by Empower with feedback and input from the board. I would note that initially, I think staff noted a little bit of reluctance or hesitation when the board, or when staff, suggested perhaps keeping some of the current folks if they were interested, or more input from the board. Upon subsequent meetings, subsequent questioning, they softened that position. But I did want to note that just as an initial comment on the on-site team. Also, I think critical to note, and you'll see this at the top of page 4, is that for Empower, an on-site CFP was not included in their initial proposal. And if we wanted to add that, it would cost an additional $5 per participant. Fees, I think this is perhaps the biggest fees, along with the stable value of the guaranteed fund options. I think this is where you'll see some of the biggest differences between the 2 providers. Empower's initial fee proposal was listed at $11 per participant, but with a key qualifier that all assets in Nationwide's current fixed or guaranteed fund transferred over on day 1. I'll get into this in a little bit of detail, try not to get too much in the weeds, but I'm happy to get into the details as much as folks want. Given current constraints in the fixed income market, not just for us, not just for Nationwide, this is across providers, other clients and folks we've talked to, it's extremely likely that if we did switch providers, that assets in a Nationwide fixed account would move over to Empower in 5 or 6 tranches. It would not be a day 100% over. If that's the case, the cost per participant rises to $19 per participant annually. And then, of course, if you add the CFPA, it goes to $24 per participant. Right now, their members are paying $13.20. So there's a significant gap there. Fees are also related again to the stable value and or the guaranteed fund. So Empower proposed one option, and that's a custom stable value fund, which is similar but far from identical to the nationwide guarantee fund. You'll see that as of November 7th, the crediting rating is significantly higher. I'll get into the reasons for that. It was at 5%, although you can see it had dropped somewhat significantly by January 4th down to 4.7. The proposed interest rate is influenced by a couple of things. First, it's influenced by what the market value as opposed to the book value of the assets in the nation. So what I mean by that is when you buy bonds, depending on how interest rates move, think about it this way: if you buy a bond today for $100, that's paying 3%. Tomorrow, the Fed raises rates to 4%. You could buy a bond for the same amount of money. That bond that you bought yesterday is not worth as much, right? So the book value of that 3% bond is going to drop, and you're not going to get full book value until it's entirely paid out. And given all the gyrations and the sharp upward movements in interest rate market, that's why you're seeing, again, across many plan sponsors, you have this difference in book to market value. When you have a market value lower than the book value, and you do a transfer of this kind, you have to make downward adjustments, at least initially, to try to equalize those two things. So you'll see in the footnote, if, for example, the market to book value at the time of transition was 95%, the creditor rating initially falls all the way down to 3%. And the book to market value is lower than 95% for us and a lot of other folks.
Chris, is this customary for these types of vendors to require that? Or is this something we consider in that?
Yeah, we had something similar happen. Folks who were on it, who were at the time, Carol and Brian, a few others. When we moved from ICLA to Nationwide, we had a similar, there was a lag period where the assets didn't all transfer over. What I would say, Diane, is that at that time, it was a significantly shorter time period. It was 6 to 12 months. This is not uncommon. I don't want to, I speak to folks offline. I talked to another local in-state government provider not using Nationwide who faced an issue almost identical to this just within the last couple of months when they were looking at switching providers. And they had the same kind of offers from in terms of this. So it's not, this isn't a one-off for us in terms of how that would work. I think it's also important to note that the underlying, the underlying portfolio of a fund like this, a stable value or custom fund, has a shorter duration than what you're getting through the Nationwide fund. The shorter duration in part is what allows the interest rate to be higher. But the shorter duration is also going to mean that you're going to see larger increase, in my opinion, in staff's opinion, you're going to see larger increases or decreases on that quarterly basis, just given that the duration is shorter. So depending on how interest rates move, I think that the swings could be a little higher or lower every quarter. Like the guaranteed fund, it would have an interest rate that resets quarterly. Nationwide. Yeah.
When you spoke earlier, you mentioned the power called the stable value fund versus the guaranteed fund. It's stable value versus the guaranteed funds. But that's not really the apples to apples. The apples to apples is what Nationwide also proposed as the stable value, right?
Correct.
So those interest rate comparisons, it's not about.
No, it's not. And you're exactly right. When we got to the second option, I would mention that. But to your credit, you jumped
I
in.
want you to jump at it.
No, it's exactly right. And that was a discussion that staff, I remember, and myself had with Empower, trying to compare the interest rates. And I think we used exactly that phrase. That's not an apples to apples comparison. You didn't propose a guaranteed fund. Those stable value, and there's some key differences between those two things. So that's exactly right. Nationwide proposed two options. The first is we maintain everything as it currently is. We continue to use the fixed account. Participants pay $13.20 annually. We would have a floor on the guaranteed fund for this year of 2.6 and 1% for the entire contract term. We continue to receive advance notice of 1 quarter for any interest rate changes, so it would be exactly what we have now. The apples to apples comparison that Fran mentioned would be to move to a guaranteed separate account. As you see, that interest rate as of October 30th at 4.86, very, very similar to the custom stable value fund. Proposed interest rate again would be influenced, at least initially, in part by that market to book issue. And we have some downward adjustments initially. I do note, however, if we elected this option, the price per participant rises to $20, so there's a fairly significant increase. Key differences between the stable value and the fixed account. I've covered these, but just to confirm, the stable value or the GSAs have shorter duration, about 3 years less than what participants receive. It's why the rate's higher right now, but it can cause more frequent and sharper, movements up or down. It can make your long-term planning in terms of what you expect to get from that interest rate a little bit less stable. You don't have the kind of the guarantee or the stability of what that rate's necessarily would be on a quarter-to-quarter or year-to-year basis. Second, in either of those stable value options, you're not going to receive the higher rate for multiple quarters because of the book to market. For example, with Nationwide, if we moved everything from their guaranteed funds to stable value, you'd likely see interest rate below 1%. When we put all those things together, it's staff's recommendation that we retain Nationwide as the board's TPA, and then we do so in the first option where nothing will change. We believe Nationwide's partnered well with the board over the past several years, steadily increasing enrollment, participation, additional employees that they've helped enroll with the board's health and education subcommittee. That means more saving and deferred compensation. And as Brian and Marcia talked a little bit about earlier, they've also, the board Nationwide staff has made progress in getting participants to better diversify out of that guarantee. They still need some work to do, but at one time, I think we were well above 60 to 65%. We're now down to 45. That's pretty heavy, pretty heavy. The employees and members receive good service from Nationwide, high quality from their retirement representatives. We often receive feedback about their excellent work. And lastly, while Empower is a well-known provider, and we believe will likely do an excellent job, we think there should generally be a compelling reason for a change of this type. It's maybe not so much worried about administrative burden on staff, that's our job, but on the participants, that may be a high cost and cause a little bit of anxiety. That would include transition of funds out of the Nationwide account and now lockup period. I think that would not necessarily be well received by a lot of participants. I don't know if it necessarily well received several years ago made the switch. And then lastly, the annual fee would be higher with Empower under this scenario, and we would need to pay an additional $5 a year for the CFP. I think I would close. I can't really stress the value of that CFP. If you try to book something like that, yourself, kind of outside the program, talking several $100 an hour, at least to meet with someone. The folks up there, I think both of them do. He does an excellent job. The prior CFP did an excellent job. I think that's a really important component of this service that members get. So happy to take questions, but staff's recommendation would be to continue with the current model that we have.
Chris, let me just add that I want to thank Rev, Chris, for this analysis. So you just look at the proposals and responses. You want to look at 4.86%, you want to look at 5%. Wow, that's great. But as Chris said, it's not everything you see is what it appears to be. If we would migrate to that, as Chris indicated, we would not get 4.86% for maybe several months, maybe several years. because of the go-to-market. The actual rate will be under the 1%. So I'm not sure how they're able to actually get that. Get a response on for you back from that response I had. But it's interesting to me that they're able to put that in a response where that would not be the effective rate. So because this board is a very knowledgeable board, because staff did a great job. Oh, by the way, Chris, that was a great presentation. Because staff did a great job in synthesizing all this material, we get to make an informed decision. That's important. That doesn't happen on a lot of boards. So thank Chris and the staff for doing that. It's great work.
Thank you. And I should mention to the contract was originally expected to, or was slated to expire in early February. Francois, the law department, that done, it's either already been extended or in the process of being extended up to 6 months. I don't think it should take that long just to cover us for any gap, regardless of what decision we make. So, thank those of you who had it, I was not here.
Any discussion on that one?
That we got the staff second.
I'll second. I second my motion.
Sure,
And
so,
make a motion.
Carol, would you like to repeat, just so everyone's clear?
I make a motion to accept the recommendation of staff. To retain, nationwide with the first option.
So status quo offer.
That is good. Yes.
And so that motion was seconded by Brian. Thank you. Any discussion on the pending motion? Hearing none, we'll go to the roll. Christie?
Approved.
Brian? Francois?
I approve.
Vanessa is saying,
I approve.
Marcia? Roosevelt?
Approved.
Paul?
I approve.
And Karen?
Approved.
Motion carries unanimously. And with that, I'm sorry.
Great job. Thanks, staff. Great job. I did a good job. Thank you.
And
Should we agree nationwide? And,
I said, yeah.
It's not bad.
Yes.
It's not the dog, Frank.
Great humanitarian, right?
Fire department. Great humanitarian, we're there.
Would you like to let them know?
Sure, so, thanks for, we'll be contacted formally later today, but the board voted to retain CPA, nationwide under the current pricing arrangement. Congratulations. Myself or another member of staff will connect with you today. Should be a fairly seamless contract. Thank you for your good work and effort.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. It's an honor and a privilege for the paper granted, so thank you very much.
We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The members appreciate it and we appreciate it because they happy, we happy. Make it easy on us, that's right.
All right, great. A motion to adjourn for a conference has been made and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, we are adjourned and we'll move to the meeting.
Great, thanks, Jackie. I'd like to call the investment committee, session. The first agenda item is approval of the minutes from December 22nd. So move to properly second the minutes be approved. We'll call roll. Christie?
Approved.
Brian? Vanessa?
Approved.
Marcia?
Approved.
Roosevelt? Approved. Paul?
Approved.
Carol?
Approved.
And Bannick, you're the eighth. Motion carries. Thank you all very much. Takes us to agenda item 2, which is quarter 2 MWPPE and local brokerage.
Thanks, Ron. We'll review the fourth quarter data briefly next month, but in terms of the third quarter data for the local minority brokerage program, as you know, fund managers, public market managers are first, they're at 35% of their trades to brokers, through a list of WPP and local firms, subject to all legal requirements and best execution. Really positive numbers through the third quarter and year to date. Equity managers directed 41% of their trades in the third quarter and 50% year to date. Fixed income, 30% for the quarter, 34% year to date. The one manager I wanted to note, which only started with the board back in the first quarter, is Capital Group. They have not directed trades as of yet to firms. It does take firms, we've seen this in the past, a few quarters to ramp up, but I want to note and be clear, staff late last week, including the Chief Compliance Officer, and with Capital Group, we stressed the importance of this program with getting things up and running. I think it's safe to say on the domestic equity side of their business, which is by far the bigger side of their business, they have actively engaged with brokers on this list. They're beginning to do so on the international side, which is where we have our account. But they are aware that this is something staff and of course by extension the board are actively monitoring, and that we expect to see progress as we've seen with other managers after we start the quarters and year ahead. So certainly more to come on that in the next few weeks.
Thanks. Any questions? We will go into the investment performance report. A lot of logistics going on behind you, Chris.
Yeah,
Come to your left,
Chris. On your left. So cover the numbers, with a couple of manager comments, talk a little bit about the market. I'm sure these general have some comments as well. Slight underperformance for the month, leading December at negative 2.4%, compared to a benchmark of negative 2.2. I think if you look at managers as individual groups, fixed income, U.S. equities and such, however, what we see is, by and large, they were either even or ahead of their benchmark or very close, perhaps 10 basis points off, generally speaking. The one exception to that, and I want to discuss that briefly, is on page 21 of your longer report, is in the real assets category. So you know for UBS, Trumbull, and Clarion, you get numbers on a quarterly basis. They don't report on a monthly basis. What you see, however, and this is something we've talked to Marquette about already, about how we can and should change this going forward, is that quarterly number, in this case, negative 5.2 for UBS, negative 5.3 for Clarion, which is very, very close to the Odyssey benchmark, negative 5.1, is also being inputted on the monthly column. Meanwhile, the index that is being compared to is being split into a third, so that's why you see the negative 1.7. And so what that is doing is it's having the effect in good markets or when the managers are beating these benchmarks or kind of overemphasizing that gain. When the managers are underperforming, then it's greatly magnifying that loss. We believe, and I think Marquette agrees based on my conversations with Dave and Wake's colleague, Alberta, that should be changed. We should either be keeping the index the same as what we're using for the month, or alternatively, that return should be split a third as well. So it should be the same.
Going back to the conversation board, it's not apples to apples.
It's not apples to apples. And in a month like this, we do have reasonably sizable positions with both managers, and we see 10 or 20 basis points of the performance that is certainly part of it.
And it's not affecting any of your earlier periods, so we're looking at since inception or a quarter.
No,
or
because it
those
would
are all-
catch up now, it
Right.
would catch up, but in these 1 month, these 4 times a year, again, it can work in your favor, it can work against you, but it's not a reasonable comparison. So I think it's something that we will change one way or the other moving forward. No concerns with any of our other managers. I did want to note Strategic Global Advisors, who was terminated by the board a couple of meetings ago. They're still showing up on the report. That will not happen going forward. There's minimal assets left in them. One is in a frozen Russian security, less than $35,000. The rest is a small money market or government fund that's in the process of being moved over. Trying to figure out why that wasn't done by the custodial bank we did with it. But again, I think that's around $100,000. So that's the performance you're seeing there. But it's very negligible, and that manager has been turned. Just real quick, in terms of the market, the overall market, you're seeing really mixed signals across the domestic and international markets. A lot of the headlines have been negative. You're seeing a lot of job cuts, particularly in tech companies. That is starting to bleed over a little bit into non-tech companies. That being said, unemployment is still really low, and wages did go up by about 4.5% year-over-year. So that's still kind of a mixed bag. The Fed and the market seem to be at odds. The Fed's giving signals that it's going to continue to raise rates, perhaps albeit slower than it has been. The market seems to be pricing in more of a soft landing kind of scenario.
So I'm just being surprised every time you said that's what it said it was going to do.
Correct. I do think, though, the more the Fed raises rates, they'll come under increasing political and just kind of related pressures slow down or stop because drive up unemployment significantly. That there's going to be pressure to stop. Bank of Canada recently raised their rates, I think, either 4.5 or 4.75, and then announced they were going to pause. So I think the market's looking for something similar to the Fed that hasn't gotten that affirmative signal. We are seeing a lower savings rate. Credit card balances are up fairly significantly year over year. Just this morning before we came in, the home price index dropped for the 5th straight month. That's obviously not a great sign. But then, but on the flip side, airline travel, kind of consumer discretionary travel, those numbers remain very strong. The airlines, most of the airlines reported good profits, even if they were kind of hurt by fuel costs. The PPI and the core PPI numbers came in much lower than expected, which would argue kind of against more aggressive Fed rates. Would argue that those rates that have already gone through are having the desired effect of bringing down prices. Some companies are doing well too. Netflix easily beat expectations. Again, on the flip side, IBM, Microsoft, some others not doing. So I think that's why you're kind of seeing, I think prior to yesterday, the market had gone up 6 straight days and fell a couple days. It's kind of been trading at like this band, let's call it 32,000 to 30,000 now. Doesn't seem to be moving outside of that range. It is important there, I think, that the market is often ahead of where the economy is. If you go back to 2008, 2009, even as the economy on Main Street was still really struggling, not doing so well, the stock market rallied and rallied really hard. So sometimes the market is well ahead of where the economy is. I think it's important to keep that in mind in terms of investing consistently asset allocation. With that, go to Dave, I don't know if you have comments on the market or individual managers.
Nothing on the managers, but definitely with the markets, we are, for lack of a better term, it's still, highly uncertain with respect to what's going to take and what's going to trend. The one big thing that we've seen that differentiates this cycle from the last couple of years has definitely been the resurgence of value stocks, quality stocks. Investors are less concerned about, the GameStops and the meme stocks and the things the rally that shouldn't have. And we are seeing a return back to fundamentals where if a company has good cash flows from balance sheets, all the things you typically want to have in a long-term investment, we're seeing the market reward that presently, as opposed to growth stocks that have a good buzzword associated with them, but there's not much meat to the investment thesis. So maybe some caution around the economy there, typically when value as well. That's more of a bearish sentiment with respect to the outlook for the market. But as it pertains to our portfolio, once again, really good building blocks that continue to help us in this definitely interesting period.
There's nothing concern in our allocation, I mean, all still fine.
Yeah, no recommended action. I know Chris and I like to talk about it from time to time with the global involved.
You mentioned that.
Yeah. It's definitely been a good addition to the portfolio as we think about the thesis of valuations being important in the marketplace. So hopefully that doesn't come back to bite me later on this year, but it's definitely been a good addition to the portfolio.
Yeah, just an interesting observation, navigating a soft landing, that is reducing asset prices without creating a slowdown in the economy, is a very difficult thing to do. We're paying very close attention to that. Since World War II, there have been 15 periods of rate tightening cycles, and in 9 of those instances, there has been a recession. So in just over half the times, we have encountered a recession. When we look at the period of time, or the average period of time from when a recession starts to the start of a rate hiking cycle, it's about 30 months. So rates started to increase at the March FOMC meeting. That range of periods is anywhere from 11 months in the short end to 43 months in the long end. Using history as our guide, if we are to encounter a recession, the earliest that we could expect that would be at the end of this quarter or as late as 4Q 2025. Very wide range of possibilities. There is optimism because of the strength of the labor market, because of the strength of wages. The Chinese economy is starting to reopen as the COVID pressures have abated and supply chains are starting to ease. So we certainly have that to help with the tailwind while asset prices are coming down.
But are we going into a recession, or are we there, or are we coming out of it?
The only point that I would make, the earliest that we would potentially start a recession using history as a guide would be the end of this quarter. If we do encounter a recession, it could be as late as 4Q 2025. We are not in a recession yet. The expectation is very modest GDP contraction in 3Q and 4Q, but it's expected to be very small, very narrow.
And what do you think Biden's decision to eliminate the COVID-19 team is going to have on the market? Because I understand some people are already up in arms and is already. So how do you think that's going to impact, where the market stands?
So that's the emergency order, right?
Yeah.
So I think
But they don't want it, some people don't want to. Go ahead.
I think that truly just reflects where we are as a country, right? Mm-hmm. So I think some people are going to be ecstatic about this happening. Others are going to be not so happy. And the beauty of the U.S. is everything is state by state. So we say that the order, and we'll see what the results are.
Yeah, I think too, again, depending on your vantage point, as Carol
Charles' question, folks, I think who have been relying on some of the extended unemployment benefits or rental assistance or other things, child tax credits that are expiring, that's obviously going to have a negative effect. Other folks would argue that some of that, quote, easy money, and again, I'm just using the phrase, being taken out of the economy is a good thing. I really think it depends on the advantage.
Some of that's already happened.
Some of that is already happening. You are seeing certain, again, airline travel remaining strong, but then you see other areas like discretionary that, are taking hits where people seem to be, pulling back. Obviously, people are continuing to feel the pressure, every time you go to the grocery store, you're spending more on super staples or fundamentals or things that you need. Logically, if you're spending more there, you have less to spend somewhere else unless you're charging it or, deferring payment on it. Money that's going into one sector by extension has to be taken out of something else. Depending on how that all plays out, to Dave's point, that'll determine whether we end up in a recession, and if so, how severe or how mild. It's also something, as you know, the RRP payment, which is the bulk comes in early March. That's something that those kind of things are the things we analyze before we put a recommendation on where we should put that money.
Also, figures them slowing down, whether it's officially a recession, but it's been slower.
GDP came in at 2.9%. The fourth quarter, right at the beginning of last year, I think we were looking at low double digit, but double digit nonetheless for GDP. So the Fed is, I would say they won in terms of slowing down the economy, but hopefully they start realizing that GDP, the lag indicator, is definitely slowed down in response to the rates going up.
It's interesting that Paul Krugman and Larry Summers have kind of a public debate back and forth as to should this be the correct approach, whether the Fed is taking the correct approach or not, and whether it was all soft landing or not. I was reading this morning that now Krugman has come around and agrees with Summers that he believes that we are going to have a soft landing. That's a long way for Krugman to come to the cloud. So.
The hard trip was all.
David, that's possibly soft landing, what percentage of times, tighten as a result of the soft landing. Hopefully this is one of those times. When will, is that the gap that you gave, the time frame you gave as to possible recession? Is that, when will we know how we're going to come out of this tight, whether it's a soft landing? In your estimation?
Yes, a typical benchmark is used to evaluate recession, 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. So based on that alone, if we have that metric, we have been in a recession, and we went through that in 2020 or 2021, but the labor market was so strong, wage expansion was so high, and spending was so high, it was very difficult to make an argument we're in a recession based on that historical metric alone. But it's not until after we have exited that period you can look back and say, oh,
well, that was bad.
That was bad. Exactly.
Now, from an economist sort of analysis, given the number of layoffs that are starting to happen, how long do you believe the labor market can stay strong? I mean, it's one of the labor market is strong because of the lack of candidates. I mean, at least that's what the conventional wisdom to fill positions. How long do you think that can remain strong given layoffs?
Yeah, I would say that the layoffs, they disproportionately at this point, they've been in the tech segment of the market. So going back to the types of companies or the types of stocks that are finally being rewarded again is the more boring ones, the J&Js. I don't want to jinx J&J, but it's unlikely. I hope J&J does not.
He's short J&Js.
So I would say that definitely on the tech side, we've seen less resilience. I think the one really really great area of the market. And the one thing that we never really grew up with was the gig economy, right? So the labor market can sometimes look better than it is from a participation standpoint or from an employment standpoint, but the actual earning power of those participating is perhaps not as strong, right? So driving Uber, once you've lost your job in the tech sector, it's not necessarily an apples to apples switch. So I feel that the big data will still show resilience in the economy, but we will get, I think, incomes of purchasing power and, things continue to be too expensive for the general person in the economy. So the labor force won't necessarily weaken from a participation standpoint, but from a purchasing power standpoint, that pressure is probably going to be pretty pronounced for the foreseeable future.
James Defense to get top settlement was that also on purchasing factors.
That's not a good one. I'll go with Pfizer.
I think the court just threw that out, didn't
That defense, yeah.
it? What they call it, the Texas two-step, I think was it?
Yeah,
Like,
that's-
they tried to declare bankruptcy in Texas or something, different circuit, I think, for that.
Yeah, no, sorry.
Third circuit, I couldn't remember which one, yeah. Yeah, you're right, that defense was created, but it was dead.
Everybody, you might want to stay short.
Long Pfizer, short
And then just in terms of the staff report briefly, securities lending income, 123,000 for the month, 1.54 million for the year, 51.9 million for the start of the program. First and local AUM combined, 59%, 52%. When diverse managers broken out individually, 9.8 on the local side. And upcoming board meetings as scheduled, February 23rd and March 23rd, and then April 27th. As Fran mentioned, we have January.
Any questions on that?
April 25th. April 25th.
Any new business or additions? Old business? The meeting is properly seconded. Adjourned. We are adjourned. Call the full board back into session. The meeting is properly seconded to be ratified and motion taken by the call the roll. Christie? Brian? Diana? Vanessa? Marcia? Roosevelt? Paul? Carol? Motion carries. New business regarding the vice chair, we'll turn it over to the executive director.
Yes, I mentioned the vice chair last month. There's no, because of the work that Carol's doing, there are no candidates running also for vice chair, so just Carol. So the chief compliance officer is making force the board to take the vote.
Okay.
So, Jim,
Just to make sure that we're in full compliance with the board's rules. Carol's term, distinguished service ends today, so if we want her to continue as vice chair, my recommendation is that the board, that there be a motion to re-elect Carol as vice chair for another.
Second. More than have to use every vote your Carol.
that's a motion by Diana, second by Chris.
Yes. Call Christie. Brian. Diana. Vanessa. Marcia. Roosevelt. Paul. Approved. And Madam Vice Chair. Approved. Congratulations. Any other new business? Old business? This meeting probably second if you're adjourned. You're adjourned. Thank you all very much.
Me, everybody.
Sorry, I was trying to explain that, I'm after
I know Cheryl will be the